First, let me say, how this ranks into these questions, I have no idea, okay? That's the first thing I want to say. That shouldn't even be an issue to race or minority, okay? Secondly, there's 1,000 things that lead into something like this. Poverty, family unit, the family unit gone, okay? Drugs. I mean, we could be here all night with something, a question like that. But those are the things that lead into incarceration for minorities. The lack of the family unit, the heroin usage, the crack cocaine usage. I mean, like I said, it shouldn't even be a question tonight.
Now, it's been my experience throughout the state. I worked in vast areas of the state. It's more of an issue of poorness or economics, lack thereof. If you go and look at prison population, the one thing that everybody has in common, they mostly come from poor, single homes. That's basically what they have in common. And what everybody else said is pretty much correct, but it's more about economics more than somebody if they're a minority or non-minority.
Okay, next question. What role does faith play in your life, and how might that affect your judgments? Starting with Irene.
Faith plays a huge role in my life. I would not be doing this if it were not for my faith and believing that this is God's purpose for me right now. And how that plays into my judgments, God knows the rules. God wants us to apply the rules. So I think it is just making sure that you are doing a job in an ethical way, with high integrity, with a decent work ethic, with a sense of hope for everyone that comes into the court, a sense of belief that problems can be resolved, a sense that there's really good things that anyone that comes into court can ultimately achieve in their lives, and to help people not be enmeshed in just problems, but help to craft solutions.
Let's just put it this way. I believe in God, and someday we'll all have to answer to him.
Faith has a big role in my life. My whole life, I always tried to help others that were less fortunate than myself. I never took anything for granted. I was raised Baptist, but I went to Catholic schools. And I always treated everybody the same way I wanted to be treated, because that was the Catholic way. That's what they taught us in school. And when someone comes in front of me, I'm looking at them the same way I would want a judge to look at me. Judge me for what occurred, not for what you think may have happened.
Okay, folks, I was born and raised Roman Catholic, and somewhere along the line I fell off the wagon. My faith today is quite simply that I believe people are inherently good. No one's born a bad person. And I believe you would absolutely see that in any of my rulings as judge. I'm not the type of person to give up on somebody. I think the slightest bit of change in someone's life can turn around their life completely.
Starting with John. What is your vision for the future of our judicial system? What changes would you advocate and why?
Well, first of all, if we're talking at the Magisterial District Judge level, I don't think we have to change anything. I think my mentor and my friend, Len Romiak, has done a wonderful job. He's kept the politics out of that courtroom, he's kept it professional, and he's kept it efficient. That's exactly what I'm going to do myself.
Yeah, the way the law is written right now, what you have to do is use the law to your advantage. And the way it's written for everybody. Everyone's equal under the law. So there's nothing I would change right now at this moment.
There's an ongoing argument, I think, with our state laws. Quite honestly, what does it take to become a magistrate? And this is the one position, one of the very few states where you don't have to have a law background, and that's constantly being challenged. You know, obviously I don't have a law background, so I don't want to change that. But, you know, I think that's going to come to a head at some point, and when that occurs, obviously our state law and what it takes to become a magistrate, what will happen to someone who's sitting currently and doesn't have the background. I think that's going to come to a head very shortly.
Yeah, I do have a vision for a judicial system that will ever be changing and growing into the unified judiciary that Pennsylvania aspires to. There's much to be done. The Administrative Office of Pennsylvania Courts manages all of Pennsylvania's magisterial district judges, and they've made great advancements. Just one small advancement that I know needs more integration into the system is the Act 90 screen, which came out of Act 90 of 2010, which allowed for things like municipal denial of permits that by applicants who already have outstanding property taxes or outstanding violations. And there is a screen that was created after that act was enacted so that just the parcel ID can be put into the docket sheet. And that's still not fully implemented in throughout the system. And that's one place that I can give an example of where I would like to see more improvement and efficiency.
Okay, starting with Mr. Hinton. Please describe one instance in which you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it. Ethical dilemma.
You say unethical?
Ethical.
I'm sorry?
An ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
An ethical dilemma?
Mm-hmm. Maybe it should be unethical, huh?
Yeah, it should be unethical, right? It was, about, let's see, about 14 years ago, I was working with a gentleman. Every single day he'd come to work, stone cold drunk, falling down drunk, driving a police car. I go inside and I say, hey, you guys got to do something with this guy. He's going to get somebody hurt. And that was the unethical decision, or ethical decision I made on an unethical process, which nothing was done, but they finally put him on the intoxilizer. And the one day he was a 181. That's .181, which is over twice the legal limit. But he didn't get arrested for DUI like you would, or I would have. He got to go home and sober up. So I would not put up with any of those type of things. I'm telling you, as sure as I'm sitting here, I will not put up with anything unethical at all. I know how it feels.
Well, folks, I'm actually enduring an ethical dilemma as we speak in my current position, which unfortunately I can't divulge in too much since it is my current employer. I'm sure you've seen on the news everything going on with UPMC and whatnot with Highmark. You know, do I agree with everything that they're saying and their actions taking away Medicare benefits? No, I don't. And I'm currently making the decision, do I still belong at that company? And that's something I'm still personally working through.
The one that came to mind was back when I was sitting as a city magistrate, the chief magistrate. This was all in the paper, so it's all public, but he was essentially holding sessions for traffic court and not following the same process for all defendants to find their way to that court. So it was being investigated as, secret court for people that he was being favoritist to, just playing favorites with certain people. And I organized the rest of the city magistrates to write a letter to the administration to expose this practice that was happening. I talked with the reporters who were investigating, and I got very active around protecting the court and its integrity from that kind of abuse. And I will get very active around those kinds of improper use of our court system.
The one thing that comes to mind is a gentleman I worked with named Sean Green. And they used to pick on Sean Green. He was a black man. You probably read about it in the newspaper. He had shot the dog. The pit bull was coming at him. The gentleman was coming at him with a toy gun that he didn't know was a toy gun at that time. And he had the unfortunate incident that he pulled the trigger and had to put the man down. The supervisors would pick on him. Don't ask me why, they just did. Sean's a really nice kid. And one time I guess I blew up and told the two supervisors off and told them to knock it off. It wasn't right. Me being the senior officer at the time, I guess they took heed of what I was saying and they stopped it after that.
Start with Sean. Does the Penn Hills municipality have its own endorsement policy over Allegheny County?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
You got to screen some of these
Forget
questions.
that.
Yeah, a lot of these questions.
I mean, come on.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'll answer it for you because I'm the endorsed candidate. Yeah, they do. Okay? I'm the endorsed candidate by Allegheny County. I did everything proper. I put the letter of intent in. I paid the $1,500 to the Allegheny County Democrats. And they still went and endorsed Anthony DeLuca over top of me. They thumbed their nose at Wilkins Township. They thumbed their nose at Verona. They says, I don't care who they endorse. She was there. We're endorsing him. That's not right. If you were a United Steelworker of America and you went against the union, what would you be? That's right.
Does anybody want a 30-second rebuttal?
No, thank you.
Moving on.
Does Sean get the next question?
Let me say something else while I'm on a roll, okay? If we have rules and regulations about things, why doesn't anybody follow them? The Election Bureau gives you a handwritten set of rules, folks. A through Z. We're supposed to follow them. Seems like some people are...
Some people, not everybody.
Some people, you're right. Like you and I do. Some people don't follow the rules. And this is what happens.
Okay. Sean,
Hi.
do you believe that all citizens have adequate access to legal help and the legal system? If not, what can be done to provide wider and better access?
Well, I think everyone does in fact have access to the legal system. It's just a matter of the quality of counsel that they're receiving. You know, I have a lot of friends who are lawyers fresh out of college, and I know firsthand, being a public defender, it doesn't pay the bills. It really doesn't. I think we need to develop programs so that salaries across the board for lawyers, both in private firms and in public service, are equal, so that way the same quality of representation is provided to all people who need a lawyer.
No, there is not equal access to justice. It is based on if you can hire an attorney. And many folks cannot hire an attorney. They don't have the financial means to hire an attorney. I did pro bono representations for lower income homeowners who just don't have the extra in the budget to hire estate planners, to hire lawyers to do probate and estate administration. And I figured out that indeed you don't have to administer every estate in Pennsylvania, and that a deed and an inheritance tax return And a notice to the Department of Public Welfare's estate recovery program can transfer title on real estate when that is the only asset in the estate. So there's a great lack of access to justice and access to legal services. And the Pro Bono Center of the Bar Association is actively at work having attorneys do their pro bono share or fair share of the work to assure or try to assure that people do have some legal services that they need.
Now, I've seen neighborhood legal services come in, and I've seen the court appoint an attorney, okay, a public defender. Now, a lot of these kids are just coming up. Some of them are good, some of them are so-so, but they started out there. Some of these pro bonos, which Irene's talking about, you might get a gentleman from Monroeville, I can't think of his name. What's his name? Pat Tomasi. You may get Pat Tomasi on a pro bono case. It all depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah, the way the system is, if you can afford it, you get better representation. The public defender's office, they're bogged down with cases. A lot of times when you see the public defender, he's reading the person's file as he's walking down the hall or when they're handing it to him in the courtroom. He has no idea what's going on. And then when it comes time to ask questions, he waives everything. So the person doesn't get a fair opportunity at a preliminary hearing. But it's all about economics for the most part.
Everybody answered right. Starting with Irene. Many complaints about roaming dogs and or attacking dogs are brought before the magistrate. How will you deal with those?
It's just like every other case. You've got to have the prosecution present, and it's usually a neighbor talking about what happened, and then the other neighbor responds, and you've got to be the finder of facts and apply the facts to the law. Yeah, animal control is a very big issue, and it is a quality of life issue, and it is what magisterial district judges deal with. Barking dogs, bad dogs, biting dogs. It is part of the jurisdiction, and you got to treat it just like any other case, really.
Yeah, I agree with Irene about that. You have to, each case you have to get it on an individual basis. Now, we do have some problems in Penn Hills. We have in Verona and Wilkins too. Pit bulls. Pit bulls are a big problem, okay? I just ran into a problem up near St. Bart's. I don't know how many people go to St. Bart's, but 2 doors away from St. Bart's, there's a pit bull tied to the front door. Now, I've called Hoffman Kennel. I've called Kathy Hecker, trying to get something done with this dog. It shouldn't be tied to the front door. There is a big problem with animals, big problem. There's citations that can be filed and we'll have to enforce them.
Hey, this incident here is pretty much familiar to me. I had a 2-year-old Chihuahua who was attacked by 2 German Shepherds in my yard, and I had to go in front of Mr. Aromiak about 6 years ago. And I was working that day. That's the only reason why I was there in uniform. But you have to take control of your animals. The dog gets the first bite, and after that they label it a dangerous dog. You just have to enforce the rules as you see fit and judge it on a case-by-case basis. My dog was in intensive care for a week, $3,000 vet bill. So I understand. There's no reasons for someone not to have control of their animal.
And you have to be proactive with these dogs too. Okay, people in the neighborhoods, call Hoffman, call the police. Be proactive. Don't let these dogs, terrorize the neighborhood or your kids.
Sean?
I really don't have really much to add here. Like everyone else said, if a citation is issued, I would treat it like any other case that would come in front of me.
Let me just say one thing about pit bulls, since we're on this subject. Down in Blackmore,
30 seconds.
probably about I don't know, 3, 4 years ago. I was posting a house for a mortgage foreclosure was vacant. Inside the house, I heard howling. I looked around the back of the house, there was dogs tied with cement blocks, okay? These were dogs that were used for fighting. We got into the house was a fighting. The walls were painted red, it was a fighting ring, okay? We took these dogs, and I didn't know this at the time, but the dogs wanted human affection.
It was Sean's turn. Sorry. Did you have some, did you already speak about
Oh,
that?
I did, ma'am.
Okay. We're going to have 2 more questions, and then we'll have closing statements.
I'll tell you the rest of the story downstairs out.
How will you handle the cases that are continually delayed? Will you keep exceeding the hearing or apply a penalty? Extending the hearing or apply a penalty? Yeah. How will you handle those cases that are continually delayed? Will you keep extending the hearing or apply a penalty? Start with John.
What's the reason they're delayed?
I don't know.
I would need to know too.
This is questions given to district judge candidates.
I would have
Anybody
to
have an answer?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to go or do you?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Well, they have to have a valid reason for a delay. You just don't grant a delay. That's a tactic that defense lawyers use. You get the victims to show up and they ask for a continuance. But you can proceed with the case. But they have to have a reason to ask for a continuance. Now, they'll ask for a continuance, the victims show up. The next time, they'll ask for another continuance. They'll say they need some kind of report. And then pretty soon they try to wear the victim out, especially if they're coming from out of town. So they won't keep wanting to come, and they'll say forget about it. But what you do is you make sure you proceed with a hearing. Let me clear something up. Usually the first time, okay, but after that, then you start questioning it and you can proceed with a hearing.
Yeah, I think when there is, when you're in the criminal context, there is a process that you need to go through and make sure that people aren't just trying to abuse this court, and you need to be dealing with what are the requests for the continuance. But I think this question actually comes up in the context of code enforcement more, where there is a big issue and complaint about the perception that these cases are held by judges and they postpone them to try to get to abatement, which is often something that is done, and I certainly did it on the housing court bench, because you do have that jurisdiction over the case, and sometimes you can make better progress holding that jurisdiction. But what I always did when I continued a case for 30 days, I said exactly what the expectation of the court was. And if that was not met in that time period, then I was imposing fines and costs. And I make it very clear. So sometimes as a district judge, you have to use the carrot and stick approach. And you often do get results that way. But you've got to stay true to what you are expecting the party to do at each continuance.
Sure, just very quickly, I think it's a request that can many times be a justified request, but it can also be a tactic that can be abused. As magistrate, I would just simply look at the facts, see if these continuations kept occurring, and then rule from there.
Last question. What is, let's start with Mr. Hinn. What is the worst type of case? It might come before you.
Worst type of case? I mean, murder would be the worst type of case. How about serial murder? That would probably top murder.
Not a good question. Another not a good question.
I mean that is the worst serial. I guess
Yeah.
serial. Anything serial.
I can change the question.
No, that's fine. Keep going.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, that's just the last question.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
Sean, let me answer that?
I got this.
Okay,
Mark.
answer, please.
To speak for Jolando, I mean, yes, he's absolutely right. That is the absolute worst. But personally, I think any sort of spouse or child abuse would be the worst for me.
Well, we actually don't have jurisdiction as a magisterial district judge over homicides. But, you know, I don't even want to say it because as soon as it's said, there's going to be something worse that comes along. So, no, I mean, really, I don't, I think, you know, you're dealing with the skewed part of the world in the court, and people do really horrible things to people. So I'm not going to say what's worse because you're sure to find something that beats that.
Anything that has to do with a child. Anything. I don't care what it is.
Okay, for the closing statements, you want to go back to alphabetical. Start with,
Again, I'm in the lucky seat. In closing, May 19th, you guys will be making a decision on which one of the candidates up here and the one that's missing that you would like to vote for. I would ask that you make your decision and make it from your heart. All of us are qualified to do the job. As a former police officer, I never took the fact that I was a police officer as something that was given to me, it was something that I earned, but I earned it so I could represent you. So that was my approach. It was always my perspective is that the uniform don't make the person makes the uniform. And during my career, I have no regrets. I led the state. I was one of the top enforcement officers for DUIs. I did truck inspections, car seat inspections. I've done everything a police officer can do in my profession. No complaints from the public because I treated everybody the way I would like to be treated. And as your judge, I would do the same for you. And that's the bottom line.
Well, folks, first I want to thank you all for coming on out here tonight, and also the CHCA for hosting this event for all of us. You know, as Jolando said, there isn't a bad choice in front of you right now. We're all very qualified individuals, and no matter who you pick on the 19th, you're going to have a fine magistrate. I think you've probably heard from all of our answers that for the most part, we're all on the same page, and our differences are small, which is what exactly you'll be looking at. So all I can do is tell you some of my small differences from the other candidates. One small difference is I'm only running on the Democratic ticket. I'm not running on the Republican ticket. Why is that? Well, I believe in the primary system, first of all, and I believe in the Democratic ideology. I'm not going to sell my own personal beliefs to try to win an election early. Another small difference, as you heard, is our views of what the single most important factor is of a judge. For me, it's impartiality. So now I'd like to just paint a small picture for you all very briefly. So imagine an unfortunate circumstance occurs and you end up with a citation and a visit with one of us. And I'm not talking a date out for steak in a movie, it's to come plead your case. And you've done nothing wrong, you know that. In fact, it was just a misunderstanding with the police officer. You go in front of a judge and you plead your case. Do you want your judge to have a prior relationship with that officer that's bringing charges against you? Can they be completely impartial? I don't know that answer, but all I can tell you is I don't have a relationship with that officer, and I can give you true impartiality. Thank you.
Yeah, again, thank you all for being out here tonight and coming out and hearing each of us give our answers to your questions. Really special group of people here, especially with this heat. But for a complete decade, I imposed bonds, I made decisions, I did a lot of traffic hearings, and I was the designated Pittsburgh Housing Court judge. So I heard all the property code enforcement cases filed by code inspectors, fire officials, health department for the entire city of Pittsburgh. And I worked really hard to improve court administration to ensure effective compliance with my decisions and orders, which positively impacted Pittsburgh's neighborhoods. And I am ready and willing to serve the bench out here in our eastern suburbs. I want to contribute to peace and safety in all of our communities. and prosperity. A recent Philadelphia study showed what I know from the Housing Court bench, that a strategic code enforcement system that includes a dedicated court can increase property values 30% in that study. I have what it takes and more. I can hit the ground running, and I will do just that.
How you doing, folks? It's hot. I can tell you that right now. I've lived in this community for 54 years. I've been protecting and serving you for 30. I'm here for the long haul. This isn't a stepping stone for me. It's like some attorneys do. They get into this office and then they use it to come up to Commonwealth Police Court. I'm going to be here for the long haul. My office will always be open for each and every one of you. If you have a problem, you can come and see me. Hopefully on May 19th, you'll show me your support, and I thank you all for coming.
Thank everybody for your patience, and thanks for the candidates.
Thanks for coming. We just asked that everyone head down to the basement. If you wanted to stick around and talk to the candidates, we asked that everyone heads down to the basement. It's much cooler down there, so don't waste any time. Thank you.